So today is a big day for this garage job. We got this angle iron delivered on Friday and we need to cut it to the right length and get it up into place and start picking that header up and straighten it out because it's bowed about 1/2 inch in the middle. So one of the challenges we have is this angle iron, a little bit of a curve on that corner, so we got to do round over on the header so that once we put it in place it's making full contact with the back of the header and the bottom. You don't want any gap because of that round over. Got to cut it the right length exactly, muscle it in there and get a bunch of bolts, and we need them to go right in the middle of that, both of those 2x12s. So we got a lot of other stuff to do today, and this is a big day though, so keep you posted. So it's the end of the day and we got a lot done today. Unfortunately my metal beam guy couldn't make it here to drill these holes for us, but we do have them all laid out pretty well. Now I got my laser on this beam now and I can show how much of a bow is in it. So up here is about maybe even 3/4 of an inch down. Or that's like that's the highest point on this beam. My laser is hitting the middle right there. It's perfectly lined up. And on that far end I have about maybe 3/8 of an inch. There's actually a little gap above the header, so not exactly sure where it was supposed to be, but we got this beam cut exactly to length to fit the opening. Now we had to go and measure this long leg of this angle iron is going to be vertical on the inside of the garage on the header. And we started laying out these holes. I got them marked out with a little pilot bit just to mark the spot where he can start his bigger holes. Now those holes need to be big enough to fit these bolt heads with some clearance. So, and they're gonna start with the location I have marked on the angle iron right now is the final location. But when we put this beam in, it's only gonna be making contact in the middle on the low spot. And we're gonna push it up into its final position. Not necessarily perfectly level, because I don't think we can get it perfectly level, but that will be okay because it's going to be strong and fully supported. So without all the insulation, it's a little easier to see why I was concerned about this beam. It's got some pretty significant cracks in it, and they do pretty much go all the way across. And I know it's bowing because I have the laser on there. So we're gonna put the angle iron up on the bottom of this header, and then we're gonna put the jack posts in the middle, and we're gonna start. Then, like I said before, we come in and we take this beam off after those jack posts are under it, holding it up. We bolt it in the middle where it's making contact with the wood. So it really will, those bolts will hold up the weight. We don't even necessarily The bolts will hold the weight up even without the jack posts underneath it. But then we come inside, take this beam all down, and then we start jacking up on that angle iron, pushing up the middle, the low spot. Once we get it to where we want it, then we put permanent jack studs on either end on the outside next to these double 2x6 king studs. That's what those are. So the metal beam guy is coming tomorrow and we're gonna get these drilled out. So we need to do one hole here where we have it marked, and then we need to have a second hole centered about maybe 3/4 of an inch above it. Tricky part is it's gonna be a 1-inch hole and then an offset of 3/4 inches and another 1-inch hole. So it's really like a slot. Kind of hard to do with a drill because drills don't like to drill in that orientation where there's only half of the bit is cutting something. But then after we get those are clearance holes to fit those bolt heads so that the angle iron can sit nice and flush against that header. After we do that, then we can drill a bunch of other holes for the actual hardware that we're going to use to secure this thing to the header. So I had to buy some 2-inch flag bolts, and those are going to go on the vertical leg that's on the inside of the garage. And since there's that big metal plate in the middle of that header, we can't use anything longer. So I'm just going to do these 2-inch, these are 5/16 lags. And then from the bottom, we're going to use these flathead wedger locks. So yeah, we're getting there. We got a lot done on the inside today. Finished the other side of the playroom wall. So all the framing's pretty much fixed. I still have a couple studs we didn't get to today, but these are easy, they'll go quick. Got 2 in that spot and maybe 1 over there, I'm not sure. But tomorrow we're gonna pick this header up, put it in place. After that, I can take that beam down, and then we're getting really close. So I'm pretty excited to have this done with. It's been a real drain on me since I've discovered it. But I'll be back tomorrow after we drill all those holes and show you how it's all laid out. So today is the big day for this angle iron. We've got all of our holes are drilled out, and these holes are about, these clearance holes, the bigger ones, are about 1.25 inches, give or take. Forget what size drill we used. Had my metal beam guy come over and help use his magnetic drill press, and it was actually a coring bit, so had a little plug we had to get out of the bit when he was done. So we got about 1.25 inches. Actually, I was gonna put tape on it. I don't know. Here we go. Looks like 1 3/16. So those are about 1/2 inch bigger than these nuts over here. These nuts are about 13/16. So not quite 1/2 inch. Now the question is, will this angle iron fit over all the nut heads because those were measured from the bottom of the beam as it is, which is in a bent position, and I'll show you right now with the laser. So, let me turn this light off. My laser level is at the very top of this header, kind of in the middle, but a little to the left of the middle. On this side, we've got about 5/8 to 3/4 inch. So, I don't know why my camera just cut out, but got about 3/4, maybe 5/8 of an inch gap on that side. It's level with the top of the header in the middle, kind of a little left to the center. And then over here, it's about 1/4 inch gap. So there's a bow in this beam. Now, when we laid out these clearance holes, we measured from the bottom of the wood. Since it's bowed, theoretically this should fit perfectly once that header gets straightened out. But the question is, will it fit when it's not straight? So that's what we're dealing with. All the rest of these holes are just arbitrarily placed. I went about 1 foot on center for each of them, and I staggered them. So 1 foot here, this one's on the bottom of the header, this one's the top of the angle iron, kind of in the middle of the header. So staggered that way. On this leg, this is going to go below the existing header, staggered about halfway in between those holes, and staggered this way, top and bottom. So, and then I had to also make sure I wasn't going to hit any of these through bolts that are in the header. So there's about 40 screws that are going to hold this thing to the header, and I'm using 1/4 inch, no, 5/16 inch lags, 2 inches long, with washers. Those are going to go in the tall leg of the angle iron that's on the inside of the garage. And since there's that metal flitch plate in the middle, you can only screw into that first board, and then these guys are going into the bottom. These are going to go up. Now these holes here, the placement is about in the middle of the first 2x12, so tried to center these about 3/4 from that face. These ones are about in the middle of the second 2x12. So the center of these is about 2 inches from the center of these going that way. So that kind of is important because you don't want to line that hole up with the flitch plate in the middle of those two 2x12s. But there's gonna be 6 of us picking this thing up. Weighs about 350 pounds, I think. This is 1/2 inch thick steel. Got 4 inch leg, 6 inch leg. And so plan is get that top panel of the garage door out of the way, pick this thing up, rough it in, and check if those bolts are clearing with our clearance holes. Then we bolt it in the middle where it's making contact. These things are strong enough. One of these bolts would hold 350 pounds probably. We're gonna get a few of them in, maybe 4 or 5, just to secure this thing temporarily. And then we take that beam off the wall. Before we start jacking up on this angle iron, this beam needs to come off the wall. Because right now, this is holding all of these studs in a straight line, and it's taking the load of those studs down to these new studs we put in. So we are trying to straighten this header out a little bit. We don't want the ends to really move. We just really want the middle to straighten out. But if this beam is here while we're jacking up on the angle iron, this beam would have to bend as well. So get the angle iron up, hold it up temporarily with some of these bolts, come inside, take this beam off, and start jacking up on the angle iron. So that's the plan. There's gonna be 6 of us, so it's actually not gonna be too hard to pick this thing up, but I'm really hoping we don't have to take it off and modify any of these holes. That would be real pain in the butt. So anyway, about to get started here, so wish us luck. I'll be back. So we got this angle iron in place. We got some hardware in the middle where we had contact. We had a couple issues with our clearance holes. Actually had to cut that bolt head off. I think it was the nut I had to cut. And then we had to take the nut off of this one because the hole was not centered on my line, unfortunately. That's all right. We're putting so much new hardware in this thing, it doesn't even matter. So we put the jack posts under the middle. Then we took the beam off above the opening. And we're ready to start pushing up on this thing. This is where my bracing from the wall to the ceiling is gonna have a big impact, because as we're pushing up right here, we don't want this wall to come in, and that bracing is what's holding it. So it was not easy. We were struggling with 6, no, there's only 5 of us, but we did struggle a little bit. We first thing we did, we got it high enough that we could put a couple of lags in the top row of holes. And then we took that C-clamp, had it in the middle here, and we were able to suck the bottom in because it was on a big angle. And then once I sucked that bottom in, I got these bottom lags in. And once I knew that gap on the bottom was closed, because we got where we needed to right there in the front, then I sent some of these screws up, holding the bottom. So we got 5 screws in the bottom right now. One of these is, that hole got stripped out, unfortunately. And I think that one's stripped too, but we got plenty of other holes, and we got 3 or 4 on the back leg. Now we're just gonna pick up on this thing, and once that's up all the way, we put our permanent jack studs in, and that's it. Then we start really prepping this. That's the permanent solution. We come back, fill in all this hardware, and then we can really get ready to drywall. So I had to put some nailers in for a garage door company. I had to put a 2x6 up top there. We got this here. It's another nailer for the garage doors. And then I might have to further this out a little bit. They wanted a 2x6 going vertically on either side. So they're really wrapping it up here. So it's looking good. Once these permanent jack studs go in, then we could take this temporary wall down. Take these braces off, temporary wall comes down, and that's it. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll be back. So today went really well, and our angle iron is up in place, and that thing is solid. We were able to close the gaps pretty much all the way. There might be like an 1/8 inch on the ends, but it's definitely doing the job now. Can't see it because I blocked it all off. That's the top of the angle iron right there. Now this is going to be like this for about 5 weeks, I was told. Once I do the trim on the outside, I can tell my garage door guy what the size of my opening is, and he said this door is about 5 weeks out. I don't know why. It's nothing special, but it is going to be nice with the high lift tracks. So my tracks are going to go all the way up to the ceiling, and then they're going to start curving. So my old garage door, when it was open, it was like right over our car. It came out to, you can actually see the tracks. That spot there was where the motor was mounted, and this is where the back of the tracks were hanging from the ceiling, but they were only about 7.5 feet off the ground now. And when they were open, they were blocking these 2 lights, which sucked. So now with this new track, it's going to go all the way up. So I'll have more headroom and more light in here when the door is open. But we got all the hardware in the angle iron. There was about 20 5/16 inch, 2 inch long lags on the back of it going into the header this way. And then I'm going to take you outside and show you the bolts we used on the bottom. Those were flat locks, I believe. Got some over here. Those. These guys. So, alright, let's go have a look outside. Now, this whole wall on this whole side of the house is all done. I've replaced all the rotted framing. Everything's supported. Obviously, we took our temporary wall down. The bracing's down. That was only temporary for while we were jacking up on the header. So the load-bearing wall is doing its job now. All we have left in here is a little bit of blocking for our drywall, and for the garage door we need to put a couple more boards up for them for nailers for the hardware. But yeah, we're gonna put a bunch more insulation in. I've got all this extra insulation left over, so we're just gonna fit as much as we can, use it all up. And I got all the trim I need for the outside, so tomorrow we're gonna start drywalling in here and a coat of tape. I'm gonna trim the outside and prep that for paint, and we're wrapping this job up. So really happy with it, how it came out. Got that over there. I have another video on the repair I did in here. I didn't bother filming that because it was the exact same thing. We just moved that temporary wall over there, pushed up on the joists, replaced all the rot, and here's what it looks like on the outside. Those bolts are spaced every foot, staggered back and forth. I doubled up on these. These are jack studs holding up the header, all pressure treated. I screwed like crazy on these things. Got 5, 10, 15, 20 screws. Those are the 5 5/8 inch long screws that are going through basically almost 4 boards. And yeah, so this is it. I'm really happy with everything, like I said. Came out great. Now it's just putting everything back together and final touches. So drywall, tape, and paint. That's it. Thanks for watching.